So before I begin, I would like to apologize for all the noises in the background. I am actually at a very noisy place and I am actually near a farm and there's all this rooster crowings, and so I would like for you to accept my humble apologies. All right, so this is going to be the first review I put out, and it is going to be about how the previous week eventuated and how it would have been beneficial to traders. Um, I would like to keep this very quick, so I'll be only focusing on the hourly charts. I'll be only talking about the internals that happened on the hourly chart. Now, prior to the previous week, I put out an outlook where I exhibited my analysis in a conditional expression using a single imbalance in price as a measure of how price will book based on how it reacts to that imbalance. Well, in retrospect, we can see that price actually expanded significantly lower into an old weekly low, and I actually outlined that old weekly low in an update to the weekly outline I did. Actually, my target for the weekly outline was this previous week's low, and then eventually into this um, low end of this old weekly opening gap. However, I did update and set my target for this old weekly low. Now, if you have to pay attention on this whole mechanic of things, um, I did mention that if price expanded through this imbalance and then refers back to it in a form of retracement, then I will want to see an expansion higher into this previous week's month, which was the October's high. And also that if price trades below this imbalance, now mind you, this imbalance specifically is a BC, a buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency. And so I said if price traded below it and then come back to the low end of it as a form of retracement, then I would like to see an expansion lower that will invalidate this bullish divergence that was present in the market, and then further lower into the previous week, and then into the low end of this old weekly opening gap. Now, on Monday here, right? Let me set this. On Monday, this horizontal line here depicts where the 9:30 a.m. opening inside this whole range. All right, so we can see that the 9:30 a.m. open was, oh my, right here it is. No, 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 no. All right, so the 9:30 a.m. open was right inside here relative to that range, and well, since price was above this BC, why did we not see price retracing into the high end of that BC and then expanding higher? Well, that is because of the presence of this high right here. Technically, technically, that high is an intermediate term high, all right? And the usefulness of intermediate term highs is that when we are looking at a certain bias, in this case, bearish, well, with the benefit of hindsight, bearish, we do not want to see this high being traded through. Now, how is this an intermediate term high? Well, if you look further left, this was an imbalance, a CB, a sell side imbalance, buy side inefficiency. And we can see this high rebalanced this CB, left that high and then dropped. Now, if you see a scenario like that, this high becomes automatically an intermediate term high in the sense that we do not want to see price trading through it. If price trades through it, then that is a significant market structure shift right there. And then we would have been looking at this high. However, that did not happen. And so, since that did not happen, we will be looking for bearish price deliveries. And so, we saw a drop into the BC. We retraced into premium of that BC. Well, if you gauge with your eyes, you are going to see that relative to this high and to that low, we retrace into premium of that. And so if I measure it, the gun box, so that is going to be it. All right, so the green side, the upper side, that is the premium side, and then the reddish side, that is the discount side. And so we retrace back into the premium side of things, and then we dropped lower. Well, we dropped way significantly that way significantly that this bullish divergence was invalidated. And I mentioned that in the outlook that if that is to happen, then we will likely see a drop into the previous risk low, which also happened right there. Now, after that, we saw a retracement into this range. If you look further left, this is an old daily low, right? So that was the previous Thursday's low. We traced into that, and that also happened to be coupled with a 1 hour CB. So since this level is an algorithmic or institutional level, price will refer to that, respect it. The market is going to refer to that, respect it, and then drop once again. And so we see this drop actually fully closing this old weekly open gap and then expanding further lower below it. Now on Wednesday, well, all this was happening in Tuesday, all right? So this was Monday, we closed here. Tuesday, we closed there. And then on Wednesday, well, since we have seen all this expansion, well, that was loud. Please forgive me for that. Well, since we've seen all this expansion, it would be only logical that a very significant or deep retracement occurred, right? And so on Wednesday, this was the New York session on Wednesday. Let me set this on it real quick. All right. So that was the New York midnight open, and then that was the New York session on Wednesday. We saw an expansion higher into this whole expansion lower, all right? Well, if we are to measure from the high to the low here, that went into premium relative to that range. And so that is significant because since we are bearish, we would want to see price repricing into premium of our ranges, and then that is where we will be looking for shorts. Now, mind you, I did update here, all right? At this level, I did update here that my target is set at this low because of how aggressive price traded through this whole gap, right? So since that happened, I was much anticipating for price to drop lower here. And so on Wednesday, we saw that expansion higher. Now, I have outlined here as a bearish divergence. If we are to, here's the ES chart. If you have to compare, oh my God, my internet is messing up. I think I have to refresh. Please forgive me. I have a very slow internet, so it messes up all the time. All right, so we are back. Yes, where are you? Yes, where are you? Right. Yo. Right. Now we retraced into the premium of that big range, and then something interesting happened. That was the formation of a bearish divergence here, right? So this high, that was the 10 o'clock candle on Tuesday, and that is the same high here, the 10 o'clock candle on Tuesday. And if you look here on encode, that candle, these groupings of candles here failed to clear that high. However, on the ears, we saw a buy side liquidity read happening. Now, this is very, very important since this high, this. Now, this is very, very important since this high also is an intermediate term high. All right. Intermediate term high, as in that high rebalance this imbalance or the CB. This high, it rebalanced the CB and then it dropped and left that high there. So generally, we don't want to see that high being taken out. However, on the ES, that was the same high. This high rebalanced this imbalance, and we can even see that on the ES, this high completely rebalanced that CB. However, on the ES, we saw a buy side liquidity read on that intermediate term high. Now, how that is significant is that when two correlated assets read when two correlated assets that has intermediate term highs like this, and then we see one being rated whilst the other do not get rated, that is very, very important. Well, I would say that that is an example of a high probability divergence. All right, so when you see this kind of divergences, that is like the holy grail of divergences, right? And we saw that happening in the PM session. So all this whole expansion was the EM, right? And right at the 1 o'clock close, which is in the PM session, we saw this aggressive drop, all right, to the point that it dropped the whole way into the old weekly low that was outlined in the outlook. And so pretty much that would be all that I am going to talk about. I think since this is my first, I think have been rusty. Yeah, I think there was a lot on my mind. I don't think I mentioned, but then I want to keep this very quick. And so I will end things here. And if you have any questions, don't feel shy to ask me. All right. So I hope you stay safe, and I hope you pray for the grace of God, because we are in the end times, all right? And I want you to give your life to Christ. Take Him, proclaim Him as your King and your personal Savior and Lord, and walk in His ways, because that is the only way to life eternal. Trust me, we are in a very, very difficult season, and you don't want to play with your soul's salvation. So, until next time, stay safe. Bye bye.